Thank you guys for coming. Like he said, we're the Leveling Up, Scaling the Smart Way panel. So we're going to talk about scaling and strategic growth today. My name is Alyssa Maddox. I put on the Retropolitan Craft Fair, and I'm on the planning committee for the summit. So hi. I would use Mentimeter, but it's not loading on my phone. Wi-Fi's not reaching out here. So if you have a question today, once we get to that portion, I'll say, hi, if you have a question, you can raise your hand. We're going to do it the old school way. We're just rolling with the punches today. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking and make time for them, but I want to give introductions to everybody. So first up on our panel, we have Sarah Mendel. She's the owner of Once Again Sam, and she came all the way from Greenville. Thanks for joining us, Sarah. Next, we have Jonathan Mills-Patrick from the Harold Lewis Group. Thanks, you. Colleen Cruz-Batty from Cruz Farm. And Matt Alexander of Holler Design. So thank you guys for joining us. To get started, I want to ask each panelist sort of a customized individual question so we can get to know them a little bit more. And Jonathan, I want to start with you. Jonathan's kind of the outlier in this group since he is not a maker himself, but he helps entrepreneurs get things going. So I guess you have experience helping different kinds of entrepreneurs take their business to the next level. But what is one thing that you think everyone should do when starting out their business and envisioning what they want their business to be like?
Yeah, so pretty easy answer. I'm going to steal some thunder from these guys over here, from the Life Work, Not Work Life. I want you all to take a step back from everything you've listened to today. A lot is about growing your business and what you should do in marketing and branding and all these different things. There's going to be questions about funding a business and everything that goes with it. I want you to take a step back from every bit of that, and I want you to think more about designing your life the way you want and then making this career or your job or something else fit into that. I did that personally a couple of years ago, and it worked out beautifully. It was a little scary at the time. But the reason I want you to do that is because we're here to talk about scale in this discussion. And scaling is relative to what you want to accomplish with your business, right? So if you think you want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg and have the next billion-dollar, or gosh, they're bigger than that, massive company, that's great. But you need to understand that everything that's going to come with that and see if that fits into your personality in the first place. If you just want to start a lifestyle business that provides for you and maybe your family, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as that fits your personality and what you want out of your business. So take a step back from everything, intelligently design the way you want your business to look, because that's going to drive all the discussions, all the things you do in the future to get you to where you want to go.
Yes, we're going to touch on many points that you said in there because that is so much at the root of what we're talking about. Colleen, I wanted to ask you the next question. A lot of us in this room, if we're Knoxville natives, we've watched as Cruz Farm grew from food truck to pop-up to brick and mortar to 3 brick and mortars. So I just want to know, what's been your attitude towards making these shifts, taking these risks? What kept you driving to that next level?
Good question. Well, I love what JP just said because I am limited by a family dairy farm. We are a small business, and we want to stay a small business. So we milk 80 Jersey cows. So that means I only have milk from 80 Jersey cows to sell. So that has limited me, and it's also made me grow. Because when I started out, we had a lot of surplus milk, and my parents were not able, can y'all hear me? My parents were not able to sell the milk because they were so busy working so hard at farming that they couldn't market what they were doing. So I was able to start marketing what they were doing, and now we actually have a shortage. So now we've gone from surplus to shortage, but the question is, do we want to grow? And we don't, because we want a lifestyle of a family dairy farm. So we're limited, and so like just what you said, I mean, we can't grow. So we're kind of where we are because this is the life that we want to have. So, yeah.
Thank you. Matt, when we were talking before this, you talked to me about how you had just built a new shop and then you lost it in a fire. And I can't even imagine how that's been for you, but I felt like there was definitely some things that obviously you probably learned from that, and we could learn from that on flexibility and the idea that you can make all the plans in the world, but you can't plan for everything. I'm just sort of curious to hear your take on this and what you've experienced.
I guess just to give everybody a little bit of a background, about a year and a half ago, as kind of a constant review of how we can do things more efficiently, grow, and get better at doing what we're doing, is we came to the conclusion that our shop, our space, was a major bottleneck. So we took the steps to start making a designing and building a new space on the farm where we live, and that, we built the shop completed it about 9 months ago. About 3 months ago, it burned to the ground. So everything was lost. It was a total loss. And I feel pretty fortunate because it could have been worse. It could have been our house. It could have been pets. It could have been sentimental things. But it wasn't. It was just a bunch of tools, things that we could easily bounce back from just by, ordering new machines, ordering new hand tools and things like that. But I felt unusually, I guess, equipped to handle this, because every day in doing what we do, we have to address something that's unforeseen, and I'm not afraid of doing the work. So it was just a matter of sitting down and saying, okay, what's the next action that I need to take right now to get back up to par? And that's what we did, and it was kind of a bigger version of what we handle every day. So in my mind, it wasn't any different. I could just set my emotions aside. My wife would say that I'm to a fault. That is something I'm really good at. And so that's what I did. And we were actually out of town when this whole thing happened, which was probably good. And on the flight back from where we were to come and try to make a home base again and get everything started up and running again, I said, what I want to do, I was talking to my wife, I would just want to sit down at our dining table with my laptop, some paper and some pencils, and start mapping out everything I need to remake, because I had, $30,000 worth of completed projects that were just sitting in there ready to be delivered. And I just wanted to map everything out, and I looked over at her and I said, I don't have any paper, I don't have any pencils. So we, it's just from the ground up, we just had to tackle it and just make a plan. And anybody that owns a business is probably pretty good at making a plan, and that's all it is.
Thank you. Sarah, you have described yourself as being cautious and easing your way into things when it comes to growth. What is your process like in deciding a new direction, or whether you feel like you're ready or your business is ready to take the next step?
Yeah, so I think a lot of you can probably relate to this. I started out just as a hobby, just as for fun. So most of the time you don't put everything on the line for something that's supposed to be a hobby. I didn't grow up that way. I wouldn't do that. So once I started to see, hey, I'm actually making a little more than I was expecting, and this is fun, and I started to get proof that people wanted to buy, what it is I was making, then I felt more comfortable investing in equipment. I started out with free material. I started out with recycled leather and scissors, and I made earrings, and I sold the earrings, and I sold enough earrings that I could buy a laser cutter, and I kind of eased into it where I knew whatever it was I was making was going to sell before I went all in. And I guess how I know I'm ready for the next thing is I track everything. I track meticulously. I track every craft show, every wholesale account. Etsy, everything, and I see the numbers don't lie, the spreadsheets don't lie. I see that things are working well in one particular area, and so I know, okay, wholesale's going really well. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 trade shows a year. I see proof that something is, I get a little feedback that something's going well, and then I kind of invest more money and time into that.
I'm curious to know, you bringing that up makes me think of what everyone else's different processes are when it comes to data. Because when I was talking to some of you were more, I go with my gut, some of you were go by the numbers. So can we talk a little bit about this system for making decision using analytics?
I guess I could throw a bit into it. we work in kind of me and the guys in the shop work in weekly sprints, and we analyze all the tasks that we're able to achieve every week, and then we review at the end of the week, like, why did we not get 10 more things done, or why did we get 10 less things done? And we try to identify bottlenecks on a weekly basis and remove those in the following week. And it's kind of a like a bastardized version of the Scrum method that like software developers use to like get a minimal viable product. And we found it's really good for what we do. So that's
Your method?
yeah, that's our method.
Jonathan, I'm sort of curious about your take on this.
Yeah, I am the outlier, right? Because I provide services for entrepreneurs and startups, not a physical product. And I get paid to work with all the way from true startups to my largest client is $8 billion in market cap to tell them what I think they should go build. And so how do I make those decisions myself? It's a strange mix. So I definitely believe in the analytics of looking at where's the market going and research and data and all those kinds of things. But then a lot of it is also analytics through conversation. So talking to folks and understanding what's the common trends and topics that come up sort of help drive me and those clients in a different direction. I think things as simple as, well, Sarah talks a lot about looking her analytics on her products and things like that. Services, you can do the same thing. Some of that's going to be driven, though, based on web visits, those type things. And again, what are people asking for? So it's not the same product versus service, but I guess what I'm trying to say is I actually believe in a strange mix of using a little bit of intuition along with analytics to go in a direction that you want to. I think I've seen some entrepreneurs that I work with go too far with analytics, and it drives every single thing they do. And sometimes it's not right because maybe those analytics are skewed. But then I've also seen those who completely ignore analytics, and then they're not looking at what the data is telling them they should be thinking about. So for me, analytics is more about telling you what you should be paying attention to and making decisions based on. It's not entirely the decision itself.
Mm-hmm. Colleen, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to add, so I try not to go with my gut because my gut is wrong. Like so I do probably 20 craft shows a year, and at the end of craft show season, my gut's saying, that was awful, don't ever do that again. But I look at how much I made, I'm like, that was 35% of my income. Like, I better get on applications for next year, even though my gut's saying, like, no, you're done. I personally like find that I need to have like something on paper that proves to me or reminds me that was worth it, even though you may feel terrible about it. It was worth it. Do it again.
Well, it's funny because when I was talking to Colleen before this, she's such a gut person. So I was just curious about you because one of the things, analytics, it's numbers, but it's also just knowing your crowd. You were talking about how you make some of the decisions for giveaways or whatever with Cruz Farm by looking at social.
I like to, make decisions based on my gut, but I guess I also do like look for just feedback from customers mostly. Just, I guess I'm a little bit of a people pleaser, so I love to know what customers want, and I give them what they want. I try to because they are the customers, and I think that's really, really important to not always make decisions on what you want to do, but what people want. What are they looking for? What do they want to buy so that they can support your business so you can stay in business? And I love businesses that do listen to what customers want. I think that I love supporting those businesses, so I think that's important.
Yeah, good, yeah. Before we start taking any questions from the audience, I did want to ask about this. When we were talking before we had this panel, we were talking about the outsourcing. And I think it might have been Jonathan who said, if you can spend $15 to have someone do your accounting, and then you can go out and use that time to make $50, well, then do that. Can we talk a little bit about things that you've decided, this is kind of not what I should be spending my time on, I need to outsource that, and how that helped you grow?
Yeah, I came at that during our discussion because, and I know there's some panelists who are going to slightly disagree with me, but you can't be a jack of all trades, especially when you're an entrepreneur. You have to know what your strengths are. I struggled with that forever, understanding what my strengths are, what my weaknesses were, and I used to want to supplement those weaknesses all the time. I was like, oh, I'm so terrible at details. I need to be so much better at that. And my mentors kept saying, no, no, no. What you're good at is strategy. Your A and F make Z, and nobody else knows how that goes together, but somehow you do, and it makes perfect sense. And so I had to focus on that. Well, if that's the case, and I am terrible at details, and it's true, then I need to find someone to do detail work for me when it needs to be done. And I realized that I could turn around and outsource that to someone for probably less than I'm charging my clients, and go turn around and take that same amount of time and be earning revenue instead of spending my time trying to figure it out. There's a fine balance there, and I think that's what we were saying on this last question real quickly, by the way, was that the key thing to understand is we all have different opinions. Some of them are right for some of you, and some of them are right for others. So maybe outsourcing isn't for you. A lot of folks who counter me on outsourcing say, well, I just can't even afford to do that. Well, that's because you're not producing revenue during that same amount of time you could outsource. If you were, outsourcing would be an easy decision because you pay someone $15 an hour and you're making whatever it is more than that. So I think that you have to understand what those tasks are. I've seen some great guides that walk you through that. I think it's a 3-column rule. They'll say, what do you not good at? What don't you want to do? And sort of make columns like that and list tasks in there. And those are potential things you can outsource.
Any other thoughts on that topic?
Well, for us, we're dairy farmers, and dairy farmers try to do everything, and things that they're not good at, they try to fix their own cars. They won't pay anyone to do anything. So my dad has that mentality, and he raised me like that. So until I was able to convince him that we should hire some people to help us out, we really weren't able to grow because he wouldn't pay an electrician to come, so it really is important to, you don't have to be good at everything. Great if you can fix it all, but who has time to fix everything? You can't. So I think it really did help the farm a lot when we started hiring other people to help us who are experts. So.
Yeah, and to me, it's not just about money. It's about, I was saying a second ago, it's what you don't like to do. I mean, I not only am I not good at detail, I just don't like to do it. It's not what I like to do. I feel drawn in other directions. So yes, it costs me some money sometimes, but I value my time way more than I do just about anything else, right? So you have to think of things in that different manner. And that will help you scale if you think about it, especially if you're a solopreneur. You're only going to grow as fast as the 2,080 hours in a year that you put in. That's if it's 40 hours a week, right? So you've got to outsource some things if you want to grow your business, in depending on the business itself.
Well, like Matt, I mean, if you didn't have people that came into the shop to help you make things, you have 2 hands. So being able to have people come in seasonally or keep them employed, in order to grow, you pretty much have to have somebody to help.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. The furniture gets heavy really quick, and you can only lift so much. So it was pretty early on that I, realized that at least for some of the more mundane tasks of making furniture, I needed help. And that's when I started to add people, and then I started to do stuff like they were mentioning later on, is like I was trying to wear all the hats of the business in the beginning, and that was going very poorly because I have a sculpture degree, I have a furniture design degree, but I know nothing about bookkeeping, accounting, taxes, marketing, graphic design, any of that. And slowly over the years, I've put those tasks into other people's hands, and it goes so much smoother that way. When you have somebody that went to school for accounting helping you with your accounting, they actually know the right terminology. They know the right questions to ask, and you're not just fumbling with a bunch of receipts for 20 hours one week trying to figure out what everything means. So I would highly encourage that for everybody.
Yeah, getting an accountant was the first thing we did when we got the craft fair. It's can't do it.
Hey, Alyssa, I'm curious, Colleen, if I could ask you a question, actually. You guys, Cruise Farm seems very culture-driven to me from the outside. So is there a way in which you guys make those hires? What I'm thinking through is, yes, you have to outsource some things, but when you make those hires, it's really important you get the right people if and when you do it. Do you have a process for how you guys go through that?
Like for hiring? I think anyone who wants to work for Cruise Farm already knows what the business is. They apply because they want to be a part of it. So I haven't really reached out to
Do you have a specific type of person you look for, though? Is it extrovert,
a positive
introvert?
person.
Uh-huh.
I like, yeah, strong back. Oh, I mean, really, yeah. Okay, you're asking a really good question. I mean, so being, raised on a farm, we have this idea that we can do it all. Like we can, like when I'm hiring, I want someone who can, first it's really important that you can scrub the floors. Like that's really important before, you may end up doing like payroll or something like that. But we want people who can do it all, who are well-rounded, because on a farm, you never know when you're going to need someone to milk the cows. So it would be great if you can milk the cows too. So yeah, well-rounded, positive. But I think people will, when they want to work somewhere, I feel like they're going to, apply because they like what they see, right?
So what I find interesting there is those are intangibles that are not on a resume, right? So when we're trying to scale a business, we're hiring
Yeah.
outsourcers or employees. Those are all things that you can't see on a resume. Those are things, to some degree, positive.
Yeah.
Willing to work hard. Those don't necessarily show up on paper, and so hiring for the intangibles is really important. It's hard to do, and the companies that get it right grow.
Yeah. Does anyone in the audience have any questions before I keep going down my list? I realized I was dominating the questions. Yes.
So the question was mostly around accounting and when you should outsource it and how you should go about that. Did any of you want to jump on that?
Well, we finally hired an accountant because we weren't doing taxes right. Honestly, we thought we were, and we weren't. But it was really hard to pay an accountant to it still is kind of a little bit hard. I mean, it's a lot of money, but it's really important because you never know when you're going to get audited. So I think it's worth it if. But I don't know how to base how much to spend on an accountant. I don't know. Maybe you do.
So up until about 2 years ago, I was doing my own accounting. I was using GoDaddy, the online accounting, and it was fine. But in the last year, I was just in tears every time I had to pay my taxes. I just don't know what I'm doing. So my husband took over it, which is helpful. But I think we are to the point where we are gonna get somebody else to do it. We're making enough, and we don't want to spend the time on that. Neither one of us is interested in that, and it's really important to get that right. So we're just getting to that point. I've been in business for almost 10 years, and I skated by on a very basic spreadsheet for a long time. But yeah, when you get to that point, I think you know it's time. We're getting this wrong. We're getting our numbers wrong. So now next year we're gonna bite the bullet and hire somebody. And honestly, I'll pay anything for that. For somebody to do it right.
I'm not on the panel, but I'm going to say just from Retro's perspective, I ended up, once I got an accountant, seeing more positive, I end up getting more money. She finds ways that I didn't see. Oh, I can write that off? Cool, I had no idea. So it ended up, for me, paying for itself because there was all these incentives that I was missing out on because I couldn't find the fine print, and she already knew it. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, if you're Knoxville-based, I don't know for sure, but I assume that the Knoxville Business Council would be able to hook you up with somebody that is familiar with small maker businesses. You want to, you want to get somebody that knows something about our types of businesses because it's going to be foreign to them if they don't.
Yeah, so I'll just add a quick thought on this. I have an accounting minor, so I do my own books because it's intuitive to me, but I don't do my own returns. I have an accountant I use. It's Eaton Tax and Business, Catherine Eaton. There's lots of good bookkeeping firms in town that are probably less billable than an accounting firm that'll keep your monthly statements going for you, and then they just turn that over to your accountant to do your actual tax return. But the thought of having the IRS knock on my door and audit me is why I have an accountant. That's it. Yeah, so I would go the bookkeeping route. She says she has a good tax person, so if you have a good accountant, you might consider going the bookkeeping route. There are plenty of good companies. I could rattle them off, so just come see me if you want me to tell you, but just think about doing that. It's a little less expensive than an accountant, but some accountants have their own bookkeepers in-house too, so think about doing that just for your monthly statements.
How do you all feel about bartering out services in exchange for the things that you need done? Bartering.
I barter a lot. I'm a big fan of bartering. I've done it for accounting services, for people doing graphic design work. I've made tons of furniture for people in exchange for, whatever. And if it's a good way, a good thing that fits for you, I would encourage it as well.
This sort of brought up another topic that I had a question about, which was funding. So I know some of you maybe started with loans from family members. Some of you may have gone the route of, I'm going to get a loan. Some of you maybe did ask your friends, can you help support me? Can you kind of talk to me about funding and getting things off the ground?
So I'm not big on taking loans. I don't feel comfortable with it. So I started with like a $25 a month budget. That was my craft supply hobby budget as a newlywed. Like, I'm not spending more than $25 a month on anything. And it worked. Like, you start making more money, you start being more comfortable spending it. So I actually did everything completely debt-free. And that's probably why it took me 10 years to get to where I am now. It definitely will slow you down if you are paying cash for everything and you're not asking around or anything. And that worked great for me because I was never, it took me forever. It took me a long time to get there, but I slept great. I was happy. If I wanted to take a break, I could. And that was worth a lot to me. I'm a slow but steady turtle in that manner.
So I'm smiling because we talked about this earlier, and I love this answer because it's perfect for her business. I'm a little bit of a contrarian, just so much that I've helped companies raise about $500 million, whether that's debt or equity. So the reason we're smiling is again, depends on your business. There are businesses that are super capital intensive. Most of them are not here today, right? But sometimes you have to raise capital to grow your business and scale an appropriate amount. That's why you see startups go off and raise large amounts of capital, because if they don't scale quick enough, someone with deeper pockets is just going to blow them out of the water. So it depends on your situation. The advice I would give you is go this route if you can, absolutely, because capital's not right for everyone. A lot of people call me because they want to raise money for their business, and they think it's the easy answer. I'm going to have all this money, now I can grow. That's not necessarily true. You could put yourself in bankruptcy, right? So it depends on your business. And the biggest advice I would give you about funding is understanding which path is right for you in the first place. Does debt make more sense? Does equity make more sense? There's all kinds of different vehicles just within that layer, so you have to understand how they work and whether or not they're right for you in the first place and what it's going to take out of you just to do. So if you're raising money for a tech startup, most CEOs of those startups will tell you it's a full-time job just to go raise money, right? So you're taking away from other things you're doing. So you just need to understand how it works and if it's right for you in the first place.
And also, from a customer standpoint, I think it's really neat to watch businesses grow. So when you start small, like you did, like that's really neat that you're able to, work really hard and make it grow. And your customers will appreciate that.
Yeah, super admirable that you did it that way.
I took on a little bit of debt in the beginning to buy some machinery. It was very small. We were able to pay it back in a couple months. And, building a new shop, of course, we took on more debt for that, which, I was fine with. It was good debt. It it was a bank loan. It wasn't credit card debt. It was relatively low interest. And to me, it made sense. Like for a couple years, I had looked for a larger space in Nashville, and just with the Nashville rental rates, I was paying just as much. I would be paying just as much to rent a place that was larger versus building my own space to be exactly like I wanted it to be. So it just made sense to take this loan out. I never imagined that the shop would burn down, but it made sense to take the loan out and have this equity at the end of it, and be able to do it exactly like I wanted to do it, instead of renting for $1,500 a month some dingy basement in downtown Nashville that I would have to outfit to be exactly like we wanted it to be. But I think as long as you're smart with taking on debt and you have a clear plan about how you can pay that back and what you need to do to pay that back, and that you're not taking on any crazy interest rates, I think it's a good idea. Yeah, we had insurance.
Any advice on fire insurance?
Advice on fire insurance. How much time does everybody have? I would say evaluate all your contents and then double that, because we evaluated everything right when we moved into the new shop, and it's over the course of the 9 months that we were in there, we just acquired way more things, and then our coverage didn't cover that additional amount, so double it. No, not everything, but close. Yeah, what I was saying is just that over the course of the amount of time that we were in the space, what we had originally evaluated as our contents, that greatly increased over several months. So that I would advise maybe quarterly taking a look at all your contents as far as insurance coverage goes. Got a bit off subject, but
There's a few things you don't skimp on. You don't skip on good accountants, you don't skimp on good attorneys, and you don't skimp on insurance.
Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay.
I'm an elected official, and I'm on the other side of this, trying to attract small businesses that are looking to get into the brick and mortar. What, as a entity, can we be doing to provide that kind of service? And I'm also a small business owner, so I've been through a build out, and I knew I bit my business. I did not know how to do a build out. What can a town do to help small business owners that are looking to venture into the brick and mortar business side of it?
I guess my experience comes out of Nashville, but makers get into doing what they are doing because they really like it. Just like we talked about up here today, they may not like doing accounting and any of those other items. And I think what was helpful in Nashville for me was that the Nashville Business Council and the Arts and Business Council provided services of hooking makers up with accountants and legal team, all of the things that people like us don't like doing. So that's it.
I would think, just practically speaking, if you're trying to get people into brick and mortar, not all makers sort of understand what's involved, like contractor resources, things like that. So if you made it really easy for them, so that you're just opening the door and saying here, we're going to get your drywall in, this is who you need to call for that, make it so that they don't have to figure that out. I think it'd be hard to turn that down, even though the maker themselves may not want to DIY the building themselves. If you give them the resources to actually get them in the door and make that process easy, I think a lot of people would probably step up and do that who might not otherwise.
Colleen, when we were talking, when you started up your pop-ups, you were like something about I just knew people would come and ask me for money. So making those resources available for people to know what's expected for them, because people don't know until they start.
When I opened the first pop-up, I decided like in a week I was going to open a pop-up store. So instead of like figuring out what licenses I needed, I just knew people would show up and want money, and they did. So like here came the health department, and here, you know, people just came, and I just opened without permission. I mean, I just opened because I figured I didn't know how to open. So I really, and I didn't have time. I was pregnant. I'm about to have a baby. I just want to open a store. So I did it, and it worked out. And they didn't shut me down. I really appreciate that Knoxville didn't shut down the first pop-up. And I learned so much. Like, and I'm so glad I took that risk at that time and did it, even though like I felt very uptight because I didn't know if I was breaking laws or not. But I learned so much, and then I was able to open another one legally. So it was good.
Yeah, so if we make sure that those resources are available to those people wanting to open, because they don't know all the fine print, and sometimes you go to the websites and it doesn't say all the fine print either. So you brought up something that I kind of wanted to touch on, which was risk.
Yeah.
You know, how do you feel when it comes to that? Because that's kind of a scary thing, but also, you know, they have that phrase of risk versus reward, you know? So I'm just curious to know how you take on that risk.
My husband says I like to take risks. I think I do too. I mean, I think if you're going to have your own business, you're taking a risk already. So I guess we're all here probably risk takers. And I think you just gotta do it. I mean, you gotta do what you love and keep moving forward. You're not as risky, but you are a risk taker though, because you have your own business, right? So I mean, there's I guess different levels of riskiness. I don't know. Is anybody out there just like not a risk taker at all? I mean, anyone just not a risk taker?
Taylor, you are not a risk taker.
You're not a risk taker?
So I'm going to take you back to what we opened with. If you know yourself, right? And I mean brutally honest, looking in the mirror, able to tell yourself the truth. If you know yourself and you've defined what your business model, what you want it to look like, that'll help you determine certain risks. Not all of them, because I don't know if I would have gone off and just done it, right? I think that's brilliant, and it worked. But you just have to know yourself and where you fit, and your circumstances too, right? Some people can afford to take risks that others can't. It all depends, and I think you have to know yourself and your model and what you want out of this and determine whether that risk is worth it or not.
Anyone else? Taylor, do you have a question?
But since Alyssa called me out as not being a risk taker, I'm not a risk taker at all. But that's why I'm in business with Alyssa, because she is. So I think it's that, you know, I've heard people, gosh, it was really great in there whenever they were talking about, like, surround yourself with people who will tell you no. I think if you're a risk-averse person, surrounding yourself with people who will tell you yes. And, you know, I feel like that's been really rewarding to just have somebody who I'm like, man, I feel really uptight. There's a 5% chance this could happen. And then Alyssa's like, no, I think we'll be good. So.
Do you guys surround yourselves with people like that? Maybe people that are different? Or how do you guys handle things like that with balancing personalities and taking those steps forward?
I definitely ask people's opinions. Like, it doesn't cost anything to ask other people, like, what do you think about this new product? Do you think this is stupid? Do you think this has potential? And like just listening to people, they'll freely tell you. And so if you keep getting like people responding like, I don't think that's a good idea, I think this is a terrible idea, you know, there might be some truth to that, but you also can do what you want to and you can disregard it. So like, I mean.
My husband says you can't see the back of your own head. So sometimes it is nice for someone to come in there and see all the angles because you're just looking at it one way. Anyone else have a question?
While you're doing that, I would have a mastermind group. I recommend it. I have a group I get together with every Wednesday, and they all tell me I'm a moron regularly. And I love it. It's hard to hear on certain things when you think you want a different answer, but they all do that. Or they'll say, no, that's brilliant. Go for it. Or don't do it. And here's what you need to think about. So have a mastermind group of people around you that you trust, hopefully the whole saying of don't be the smartest person in the room. Have people who are going to tell you, who allow you to bounce those ideas off of, and that'll help you make those decisions about what risk is worth it and what isn't.
Sarah, you talked about getting in business with your cut leather jewelry. In an earlier conversation, you described another product line of felt landscapes. Can the panelists talk about decisions about choosing to go with a different product in addition to what you're doing that may require different materials, tools, time, costs, maybe to the same customers, maybe to different customers, different marketing channels?
Yes, I know what I do is a little unusual. Like normally you wouldn't, so I have jewelry and fiber art, and they don't really go together, but I guess because my company, it is pretty much me. It's called Once Again Sam, and the Sam is my initial, so it's me as the artist. And so I decided early on, like, well, I'm not going to separate these. I want to do both of these. Everybody's telling me I need 2 Etsy shops. I don't want 2 Etsy shops. I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it. And I don't have any regrets about that. And it gets me into different markets. Like people who don't need any jewelry might like the fiber art, and that's great. And I get to talk to a lot more people that way, and it opens up a lot more doors. It does keep me very busy though, because I've got like basically 2 lines combined into one business. And I did decide early on, like I'm not going to be wholesaling the fiber art, but I am going to wholesale the jewelry. So like I really treat them totally differently, but it's all made by me, and that's the only thing they have in common. And I felt free to do that, and maybe that's a little unusual, but as a small business owner, like you get to decide that. You don't have to ask anybody permission. Can I make this? Can I make that? Like just do what you want to do.
Colleen, I feel like you've done this pretty well with diversifying, from ice cream or from milk, the other things that you can do.
I think so I said earlier that I love to listen to what customers want. And I do, but one time I didn't, but it worked out okay. So we were making like hand-dipped ice cream, which is like 16% fat. But our Jersey cows give about 5% fat milk. And we are trying to make this ice cream store work with our farm, and we don't have the cream. So we switched to homemade soft serve, which was like 7 to 8% fat, because that supported the farm. It made sense, but it really upset customers when we did it. Not all of them, but just some of them. But we had to make the switch because that's the supply that we have. This is what we can offer, and I thought people would never stop asking, and they really kind of have stopped asking for the hand dip somewhat. And so that is really, I think it worked out well. It works for the business, and when I explain to people about, the cream and everything, they understand, but so. Yeah.
You also have, because you also dipped into doing the Pizza Barn too.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Pizza.
that's probably, do you find that it's different hats with marketing the ice cream versus that, or is it relatively the same?
Well, where the ice cream store is in East Knoxville, we needed more food. Like we had to open a restaurant out there. We've done biscuits, hot dogs, Indian food, because my husband is Indian, and now we're doing pizza. We do what we love because we don't want to get bored. We keep life interesting. So, heck, we might change it again. You never know. And it does like throw customers off a little bit. But if it's your business and you're doing what you love, I think people accept it. So.
So starting up, would you recommend? Sorry, would you recommend specializing on something if you have a small budget, or would you recommend I get kind of bored too, so I like to skip around and do different things. Like, would you recommend starting off with one small thing, or kind of doing? Because I want to do the craft fair too, so kind of with that route.
Yeah, when you're starting out, definitely pick like a cohesive line of a few things that you're really good at, and prove yourself with those things, and make profit, and put that aside for the next thing that you want to try. Mm-hmm. And for me, like I'm kind of a serial crafter, serial learner. Like I got way too many hobbies. So the jewelry was great, and I enjoyed that. But I'm like, oh man, fiber art, like why can't I do that? And so it had nothing to do with it, but the jewelry was like making the money, and so the fiber art was like, now that's the hobby to the hobby, like. And so you're free to do that, but I would say definitely like starting out, just so you don't confuse people. If you have an Etsy shop, just so
they kind of know they're in the right place. They know what you're selling, and at craft fairs. But I do at craft fairs. I sell both, like side by side, and I get the question all the time, like, do you do both of these? Because like it looks like it's two different people's work, but like then you get to have that conversation about, like, no, I'm really interested in both of these things. So I think it's totally cool. You should totally rock that if you have multiple interests and talents.
Yeah, I'll say just from being someone that runs a craft fair, being able, if you do those multiple things, having a similar voice or being able for me to go there and see exactly what you're going to do. So like when I found Sarah, it was, well, you can still see her style and everything. They're different. She still has the same kind of messaging. And when I go on her stuff, I can see everything she does. So if it's all over the place, I don't know if you're going to bring this one thing that I don't particularly think is of the quality. So doing kind of your own inventory of what's got that quality level and what maybe needs a couple more phases before I can get it to that level before I introduce it to everybody.
So I'm going to do a quick exercise. I'm going to name a business, and I want you to think of what they do. You ready? Cruz Farms. I thought of ice cream, right? That's the first thing I thought of. The reason I had you do that is I do say, my opinion is to start with one thing. You can quickly go into something else, but I would start with one thing and be, as you said, really good at it. And here's why, because then you brand yourself as that, and then you move on to the next things. That's why I think it's worked for you guys, just my personal opinion from an outsider's perspective. This is actually the first time we've met, but I knew them as ice cream, but they've been able to move into all these complementary things.
But I think it's important when you start in the beginning, if you haven't already named your business, like to choose like a broad name so that it allows you, like if we started out as like, I don't know, Coco's Ice Cream, then it's like we're only going to sell Coco's Ice Cream forever, So if you're able to choose like a broader name and brand yourself, then when you throw Coco's Ice Cream throws in pizza, you're like Coco's Ice Cream and pizza, or Coco's Ice Cream and milk. It's like, I think it's just really important to be broad, to brand yourself broadly,
So start with the end in mind.
Yeah.
And the business
start
name.
with the end in mind.
Right, but you still did start with one product. It's just the business
Milk.
name. Yeah, milk.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Yeah.
that'd be.
Okay. That's fine.
So I'm not extremely risk averse, but I have this problem where after I engage in the risk and I see the fire take off, like I jump back really quick and I'm like, whoa, I didn't expect that to happen. I don't know how to engage with the fire. I had a product that I put all my resources into and it sold out I was expecting it to like temper off for a couple of years and then I'd build capital to like grow it. It sold out immediately, quickly, and then I was just like, I don't know how to engage with this again. And so my question is, have you navigated through that kind of step back before, or that kind of like fear move? I don't know what to call it. Fear of success, yeah. Fear of abundance, fear of, because I could easily just like step back into the product again, but like I'm like afraid that I won't be able to handle, like I'm afraid of it, even though it's like what I want. Yep. I hope that wasn't confusing.
Anyone have?
What
do you think?
I think it's very natural for people to set up their own plan for failing, because we always worry about failing all the time, but we never worry about being successful. And that was kind of the one thing that I had to go through, is like, oh crap, things are going really well. And I don't know how to handle this. So I guess in hindsight, put equal amount of energy into planning for things going well and how to handle that, and how to move forward as you do into worrying about all the things that could go wrong, or even more energy towards that. And I guess that's, something that I never thought that would happen to me. It was like, things are taking off, and just feeling out of place when things did take off.
So you were surprised. So you did, I guess I'm surprised that you were surprised, because I think you would want to plan to sell out every time, right? And then like, no. Didn't expect it. Yeah. Aww. I mean, and the fact that you sold out would probably make you sell it again, because if you told people that you sold out, you know, that's just gonna make people want it even more. So like, I want to know what it is. Like I already want to buy whatever, you know what I mean? So
I would tell you to go back to why you did it in the first place.
Aw,
Why'd you do it? If it was enough of a why, you'd do it again, right? That's it. And the other thing I would tell you is I think that's when you need a group of people around you. Just because you're a solopreneur doesn't mean you can't have a group around you. That's where my mastermind group comes in. I think you needed people to fall back onto that. They go, no, it's okay. I know you're scared, but we're going to get through this. Let's go to bat again. I think you just have to develop that. And if you like, do you like to read, by the way? The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Read it. The Obstacle is the Way. Read it. Everybody. It's amazing.
Obstacle is the way.
Any other final thoughts? I think I'm supposed to have everybody wrap up. Don't think I'm on.
Oh, he's got something.
You'll be our last one.
I'm not sure it's a good enough question to close it down. But, for you on the corner, and when you're working with startups, when do you find, or what percent of income replacement when people switch over to leaving my current employment to pursuing this?
Yeah, I'd tell you to follow Pareto's principle, the 80-20 rules, the other name it's known by. When you get about there, it's time to really start thinking about it. Now, if you're risk adverse, if you don't have a family, I mean, we tell all the college kids that are wanting to start a startup, it's bad advice, by the way, but I've heard it told to them, oh, go live on mom and dad's couch. Absolutely not. 80-20 rule on just about everything you do.
Well, thank you guys for joining us and being so engaging. I really recommend that if saying your question out in front of everyone was overwhelming for you, that you try to flag one of these guys down through here. They're all so nice and willing to talk to you, and that's what I did last year. I was like, hey, just 1 second. Pulled them to the side, and they'll all be willing to help you and give advice. But thank you guys for joining us, and thank you guys.